So, it's starting to look like there might actually be aliens or something, which like 2 years ago would be an absolutely crazy statement to make. But in the last few years, we've gone from only crazy people believing in UFOs to the government admitting that there are some things in the sky that we can't identify, then to the government changing the name from UFO to UAP so that it sounded less crazy, and establishing a way for military pilots to report them, and then to the Congress founding AARO to investigate these things. Finally, culminating in the Congress recently saying that yes, these things are out there, and showing us videos, albeit low quality and certainly not the best they have. But I covered all of that in my last video on the UFO/UAP stuff, so why are we talking about it again? Because there's more stuff now, and it's really starting to get a little out there. So before we actually get into this, let me just say that I'm not 100% certain that the government is going to reveal aliens. But the way things are going, I certainly won't be surprised about it if they do. Remember that whistleblower, David Grusch, that I talked about last time? For those of you who didn't watch the last video, he's an incredibly credible witness that came forward with the help of the former Intelligence Community Inspector General to say that the government not only has secret programs monitoring UFOs, but they have in their possession crashed UFOs and possibly bodies. Oh, and they're hiding it from the Congress and the American people, illegally. I go into more detail in the last video, but he's a decorated veteran who served on the older UAP programs started by Congress, and the current ICIG called his testimony both credible and urgent. Well, it turns out that Mr. Grusch is not the only whistleblower. If you listen to Congressman Tim Burchett from Tennessee, there have been multiple whistleblowers coming forward. I can quote him as saying, "That's what it's about, aliens." I think people deserve to know. He's also talked about how he believes that the US government has recovered craft at some point, and he thinks that recovered craft are being reverse engineered right now. And while Mr. Burchett is the most vocal of the congressmen looking into the UAP cover-up, he's by no means the only one. There's been a number of high-ranking congresspeople from both sides of the political aisle taking up this torch, because for some reason, these congressmen, people who are privy to classified information and briefings that we have yet to see, all seem to be coming away from the information that they're getting, whether that's from whistleblowers or from documents and videos that haven't been released publicly, with one thought: something is going on, and the American people deserve to know what. Even if it's not aliens, that should scare you, because the alternatives are just as bad. This has led to the announcement of a new hearing being held by the House Oversight Committee on, tentatively, July 26th. Which will be broadcast publicly, where the Oversight Committee will hear from a number of whistleblowers and government officials about what exactly is going on. Considering that one whistleblower, David Grusch, the only one whose name is currently public, has already made claims to the media that the US government has UFOs in its possession, then also pointed to the origin of one of these craft being in 1940s Italy, having been recovered by the US in the wake of World War II, I can't imagine what is going to be said during this hearing. But I know I'll be watching, because I think the odds are more likely that something we can't ignore will come from this hearing than they are that nothing happens. But you never know. And that would be a big enough topic to talk about if it was the only thing. But it's not. And the second thing is probably way bigger than just a hearing. You see, an amendment was just submitted for the National Defense Authorization Act this year, and it's kind of insane. Like, the biggest evidence that something is going on, and that it does not originate from the human race. But before we get into the details of it, I should tell you who is one of the authors of it, because it's very relevant to the contents. Senator Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, the head of the Democrats in the Senate, undisputably one of the most powerful men in America, one of the heads of Congress, is one of the co-authors. So as we get into the details, keep in mind that all of this has been submitted with his stamp of approval. This is not something cooked up by a crazy person who lives in the woods, but something from the desk of one of the most powerful people in the world. Even the title of the amendment would have been insane 5 years ago. And well, straight up tells you what it's about. Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Disclosure, with the alternative names Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Disclosure Act of 2023 and the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023. Think about that title for a bit. No ambiguity in it. It's a disclosure act, which would be a weird thing to name it if they thought the government had nothing to disclose. Now, I'm going to jump around for a bit, but if you want the full text, it can be found on the senate.gov website, or just like Google for it. Let's start off here. All federal government records concerning unidentified anomalous phenomena should carry a presumption of immediate disclosure, and all records should be eventually disclosed to enable the public to become fully informed about the history of the federal government's knowledge and involvement surrounding unidentified anomalous phenomena. This passage is interesting because it doesn't suppose the existence of these records. Rather, it would be odd for a passage like this to be written or included if the congressmen were not entirely certain that some of these kinds of records exist. Now, whether these records pertain to aliens, that's anybody's guess, but I think the further and we look, the more you'll begin to suspect it. Our next passage comes from the definitions section of the amendment, where it defines the term controlling authority. Let's take a look. Controlling authority. The term controlling authority means any federal, state, or local government department, office, agency, committee, commission, commercial company, academic institution, or private sector entity in physical possession of technologies of unknown origin or biological evidence of non-human intelligence. Just wow. This was written in a real amendment and submitted to the Congress with Senator Schumer's name attached. I mean, this is talking about organizations that the Congress seems to think have actual technology and even biological evidence, which probably means bodies from something non-human. Let that sink in. If you think that it's a reach for me to say that they mean bodies by saying biological evidence, the idea that someone somewhere has bodies from a non-human intelligence is again brought up in another definition, this time for legacy program. It reads, the term legacy program means all federal, state, and local government, commercial industry, academic, and private sector endeavors to collect, exploit, or reverse engineer technologies of unknown origin or examine biological evidence of living or deceased non-human intelligence that predates the date of the enactment of this act. How can you possibly interpret living or deceased non-human intelligence without realizing that they're talking about some kind of body? Heck, they even go a step further and imply that someone might have a living creature. Imagine that. There is a Senate act that directly mentions the possibility that someone has a living or dead non-human intelligence. If I told you that in 2016, you'd have laughed in my face. This is actually crazy stuff. But it gets crazier. You know, they keep using the term non-human intelligence, but no one's gonna know what that actually means, which means they need to define it, and define it they did. Here's the definition. Non-human intelligence. The term non-human intelligence means any sentient, intelligent, non-human life form, regardless of nature or ultimate origin, that may be presumed responsible for unidentified anomalous phenomena, or of which the federal government has become aware. And there it is, folks. The Senate Majority Leader offered an act that has an actual definition, which uses the term non-human life form. Think about that for a minute. This is absolutely huge. It's something that would have been laughed out of Congress a few years ago that is now being signed off on by the Senate Majority Leader. I really can't get my head around it. As far as I'm concerned, the mere existence of this definition is the most proof that has ever been offered up freely by any government for the existence of some kind of alien life, which might say more about how little actual evidence there is, but still, this is crazy. There's even more crazy stuff in this act, like for instance, an official definition of the 5 observables that define a UAP, those being instantaneous acceleration absent apparent inertia, hypersonic velocity absent a thermal signature and sonic shockwave, transmedium such as space to ground and air to undersea travel, positive lift contrary to known aerodynamic principles, and multispectral signature control. Think about that. If they are using this definition in this act, it likely comes from Aero or its predecessors, which means that prominent members of Congress have seen enough proof of craft that can accelerate instantly to hypersonic speeds with no shockwave, move in ways that don't make sense with our understanding of aerodynamics, and also transit from space to ground, that they felt okay about using those terms to define it in this legislation. Actually, what? The final thing that really stuck out is the way that stuff is going to be declassified. Basically, there will be a review board that will have to review anything that might need to stay classified, since this act declassifies pretty broadly. It's incredibly notable that among the usual people who would be involved, a mysterious organization called the UAP Disclosure Foundation is mentioned, and is actually given power over the review board. Can you even imagine? Here's a section. Consideration of recommendations. The President shall make nominations to the review board after considering persons recommended by the following: the Majority Leader of the Senate, the Minority Leader of the Senate, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Minority Leader of the House of Representatives, the Secretary of Defense, the National Academy of Sciences, the UAP Disclosure Foundation, the American Historical Association, and other such persons and organizations. Could you ever, in your wildest dreams, think that the Secretary of Defense would be mentioned in the same sentence as the UAP Disclosure Foundation? No, I couldn't at least. At the end of the day, if this stuff is crazy now, it'll probably get even weirder later, once the hearings happen, once the declassification begins. I genuinely don't know exactly what's gonna happen, but based on the trajectory we're headed in, I'd say that either way, we're looking at either the government admitting that some kind of non-human intelligence exists, or the entire Congress has gone absolutely insane and is now experiencing mass hysteria over UAPs in our skies. Which is more likely? You tell me. I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments. Also, I want to thank UAP Twitter, especially at Tiny Klaus, for combing through the entire UAP Act and finding the nuggets of importance hidden within all the legalese. And I also want to thank you for watching all the way to the end. I can't tell you if aliens are real or not, so I will at least tell you that. We're headed into uncharted waters, folks. Stay safe, have a great day, and God bless you.